Hello everybody, my name is Bob Dahlberg. I'm the tech lead of um, the SDK platform team on Settled by PayPal. Uh, I've been a developer for over 20 years now, and 10 of those years at least I've worked with Android, and I'm starting to get gray hairs. That's why I have the cap to hide it all. And I don't know if you saw the presentation earlier today about demystifying events. So I just need to add a disclaimer since we're developers. So this is event source inspired logging. Um, so we don't get into picking on my details. Um, and today I have some technical issues here, but let me know if you don't see. I can see myself. But essentially, this is going to be a story over the last couple of years. I developed my way of using my events um, as some sort of an event stream. Um, but as I said, I'm an Android developer at heart. Been building for 10 years or so, and there's some things to consider when building Android applications. Essentially, I see today you have two different ways of building or separating your modules in Android or mobile, especially Android. You have your dependency injection frameworks like Hilt or Dagger uh, that decouples your source code, but when you compile, they actually couple them together. Um, it's very nice nowadays, very modern, sort of like how you use it in Spring Boot. The other way is you have an event bus or hot observable like a stream running through your application that actually drives things forward. So this is sort of a feature where you inject your module and then you call your module directly. So you have to uh, have your API on your module and then you act upon it. And the other way around is with some sort of stream, and your features or view models can just send events that end up on the stream, and then you have to react on them on your module. So sort of inspired of an actor that just get an input into their mailbox and they have to say which events are they interested in and which we can just discard. And I'm more accustomed to this way because I started building it like this before the fancy dependency injection frameworks came, and none of them has really persuaded me into switching over. Um, Maybe I'm just old and accustomed to this, so something new is harder for me. But I've been working with some of them as well, and I feel the separation for the modules is very nice in this way. And it's easier to extend with adding an event instead of adding APIs in some places. So what we end up having is our stream running through our application, and we have different triggers that just sends events, and then you just attach all your modules on it. Um, and given the nature of mobile, the triggers can come from anything. So we have user input. Anytime a user presses, swipes, or types on the keyboard, records the voice. We have network switching from Wi-Fi to cellular to roaming to airplane mode. Maybe we have to accustom to that. Um, we have sensors like GPS, Bluetooth, whatever you're connected to, like a gyroscope. We get notification that can come at any time and just pop up in your stream. We have the life cycle of an application. Maybe you just want some logic while you see the screen and not on the next screen, or you want to keep it running throughout the application life cycle. We have our periodic work like refreshing services, refreshing access tokens. Um, We have configuration. Now the last couple of years you have dark mode, so every evening we get an event that, okay, switch to dark mode. Every morning we switch to light mode, and that causes the application to react. So if you're running when that happens, you have to react to it. Um, and it's a phone, so we're going to get phone calls. So every mobile application is asynchronous to the max and need to handle all events in any order at any time. And that's true also for each and every of our module. Now, a simple module that only handles its own events is not that troublesome to make. You just filter out your events and act on them. But if you have a module that takes in like network connectivity or things like that, then you're going to start getting harder and harder to cover um, all the cases and all the ways it can be interacted with. So writing tests for this, we can start just looking at an auth module just handling their own events. So we start an authentication, and then we need to confirm it with some two-factor authentication, and we can either check on what the auth module sends out on the stream or just the state of it. But if we look into, okay, the authentication needs to cover connectivity as well. Maybe you have something business sensitive that if we lose connectivity, we abort the entire operation, the sequence of authenticating. We don't care about 2FA then. Or we do and we add more retries or whatever reason. Now we have to test any order of any value of these. And maybe we have remote config on a server and someone updates, okay, if we take authentication, like now we enable this market to be able to log in before we couldn't. So, or we are on maintenance mode, and instead of the server handles the truth, but we want to play nice with our users as well. So getting this information, we can show a nicer error message, a specific error message for maintaining or whatever, and when we expect to be back, instead of just saying, hey, technical error, try again. We can, it's to say the least an exponential headache to try to find out all these different cases and all the orders. We can make use of parameterized or theory testing, but I haven't dug too far into that. Usually I go from when it gets too complex or too many alternatives, I'll leave the automatic testing and walk over to more manual testing. And to be able to handle manual testing, I need to know the state of the app. I need to be able to reproduce it. And my QA, my tester, my peer colleagues, everyone needs to be able to, at any given time, see, okay, this is the state we're in now. This is how we got there. It's a true skill for anyone just trying out applications to remember all the steps you did to get there. So I thought, well, let's help them on the way, and I want to be as good as them. So I started to log all my events, just adding a log module to the stream and everything, just put it out there. And I'm using data classes in Kotlin to help me. And the good thing about data classes and Kotlin is that you can create a new instance with naming the parameters. And when you log, the toString actually gives us something very similar. So the log and instantiation of a class is almost the same. So it's very easy to go into the log and just reason about everything, because you have every payload, every parameter, everything just written out in text. So whenever I have a hiccup when developing, often you develop a feature, you have a few steps to get to the feature, and you learn that by heart. After testing that for a day, you don't even look at the phone. You just click like bottom, bottom, top, and then you get there. And if there's a hiccup on the way there, you don't pay attention, you don't have the focus, and you might not be able to reproduce it. So if you can go to the log and see something like this, just telling you these were all the actions that happened, all the events that happened that caused your hiccup, then you can start reason about it and actually try to reproduce the exact state again. And when running in debug mode, this is great. But we need to think about also in production. We're not we should be conscious about logging all the data, or essentially in Android you shouldn't log anything in production, but you can have your private logs. Since we're quite fortunate that an Android device you have one user, one app, and one device, so it's quite powerful, and it's not that big of an impact to keep a rolling log of the last 100 events. And then we can ask our users to manually report if they see something that is bad. They can go into customer support page and just allow us to extract the report from the device. And also we, as an Android developer, you have a Crashlytics in your app, or maybe not everyone. Yeah, everyone has Crashlytics. And there you can actually log also into Crashlytics. So every time you have a crash in your app, it reports the crash with stack trace. But now you also have an appended log running up to that crash of the 50 or 100 latest logs. So that's a real good tool to use. But we still want to keep our data. It might be sensitive to just log everything, even if we can have it in a private file. You can always extract it somehow. So what I tend to do is have an interface with a to-log. So in my log module, in debug mode, I just use toString, and in production, I use to-log. But now I run into the problem that I lost the benefit of having data classes. So this to-log, I have to manually introduce it or write it for every event class that I have. It's safer, but it's tedious, and I'm a developer, so I like being lazy and try to automate things. So I actually, a few projects back, created annotation and thought, if data classes can generate code, why can't I? So actually, not sure this actually works right now. It's pseudocode from my mind. I don't have access to the real code, but something similar, that we have our annotations and we can just mark in our data class what is sensitive, so that our to-log function that we generate obfuscates or hides or just removes the values of that when we call to-log. And I've only been using it on strings. Even that I've worked in banking apps and similar, I never had to hide any numbers. They're never considered sensitive. Account numbers being strings. So this got me quite far, and now I had nice logs both on production and in my debug mode, but I still ran everything manually, just looking and reasoning to the log. So why not convert the log? Because it's fairly similar to code. So why not convert it into code and try to run that and create like regression testing? So when I had a blob like this, first just needed to add some sort of list containing it. And then if I had lists inside, I had to wrap them as well. And then adding quotations on strings. And I did it mainly with regex, but essentially this is code now, and it compiles in Kotlin. So with very few steps, I could have my log into an actual list of events that I can use in my code. But being lazy again, I also try to automate it to like this is protobuf that are serialized into messages, and then I had the label of the event and then the serialized data, so I can deserialize it knowing which class loader to use. And this is also great to have in production when you don't want to have your logs human readable. They're not safe, it's just one obstacle in the way, so not to broadcast for anyone. So now I have my list of events and I want to start testing it. So I could do regression test in code. So I prepare my stream and initiate one module and then just run through the list of events as if they were on the stream or they're going to be populated on the stream. And then to see that my module actually has the state or behavior that I want to. And only having one module, there's no need to synchronize or think about the timing or anything. If the auth module sends an event that is already in the event stream, I hope I'm good enough to not listen to the same event, so I get circular events. Um, so with one module, it's no big issue, but when we start running multiple modules at the same time, then we actually need to consider, okay, what is a trigger and what is a reaction from a module? Because the reactions we're going to get once more. I've tried different ways. I tried to have separate streams for reactions and triggers, or the possibility, but when I changed the module to send more events or more reactions, it got troublesome and I missed a few spots. So I tend to instead extract logic so that in my test I look, okay, what is a reaction? Can I await that reaction instead? So we send an event and then the reaction comes and we wait for example, the auth module to actually send a reaction, a new message, and we match that. So we can match it on the type or the exact equality of the message, but more often than not, the payloads of everything is not interesting. It doesn't affect the behavior that I want to regression test or troubleshoot. So usually you can just have fake and just match it on the event type. But we also could have, I try to just add all modules, like a replica of the entire application. But then it became more troublesome and I dug myself into rabbit holes by just adding so much logic in the runner that it became an application in itself. So all the reactions started queuing up and I had a pool that any reaction could come and take out another. It just got too complex. Um, so what I want to do is to reduce my event source to be as minimal as possible, to remove the heads and the tails as far as I can, keeping the same order for being able to reproduce the problem or flaw if I have one, and then use as few modules as possible as well. Because when it gets too complex, you're gonna stop doing it. But then I figure, okay, I can extract my logs into a list of messages and I can write my integration or regression testings on it. Why not drive the app? And essentially it's not for everyone. I had many applications that it's almost impossible to do. But if you are really time savers, so on Android we have this thing called flavors where you can actually have one flavor, one source set that is just for your regular application, and then you can have a flavor or with a source set for event driven. So I can replace a few of the lines of codes with files specific for when I'm driving with events, and when I'm driving a regular app. Um, but what we need to consider is like handling the reaction becomes even harder when you actually have an application running. You have animations, you have moving between fragments or views. Uh, the starting of periodical jobs, you have to be sure that it still works. I usually this just postpone it until after the event stream has gone its course. And then also the startup events. You usually, when an application starts, you want to do a lot. You want to refresh access token, you want to prefetch caches, or make everything as smooth as possible after your splash screen animation or whatever. Um, so those things, if the startup sequence are always the same events with the same payloads, I would keep them and just get rid of them from the event source and start after that. But I've tried both. Yeah, and as I said, it doesn't work on all applications, and sometimes you just drive your head into the wall. But I've seen it mainly for when you develop a new feature, is rarely the splash screen or the first thing that the user sees. It's one step in or 5 steps in. So given that state, by free, every time you try it, you save like almost a minute each time you test it. And especially if you want to have a fresh install and you want to see the landing page for the user and you don't want to see the onboarding. So just being able to skip the onboarding but still have the modules have its course that it should have if the user saw the view model or the onboarding. Same with migrating databases, real time saver, just preparing everything to the state to be able to migrate. Um, and it's essentially easy when I'm building a lot of libraries and SDKs and have been fortunate to do that. I really like those parts of the mobile application. And then you often have a sample app or a companion app just displaying and testing your library. And then you're free to do whatever you want because you're the user of the app, or maybe your integrators are the users. Then it's quite easy to just restructure it to fit, and being able to grab that event source and just drive your application with it. You can even create integration tests, just taking a stream. So that's really nice. Um, but what we need to think about when driving application is the timing, because it differs from writing tests. And thoughts going forward. I've been thinking about taking the timing from the log as well. So when you log, you get the timestamp, and then it's quite easy to just take out the diff between the stamps, and then I can run it exactly the same as it was run to the millisecond. Um, I'm not sure it actually gives me some benefit, but it would be fun. I'm curious to see if that can work. Um, Also have a manual stepper like a debugger, but for when you actually test, you have in your QA phase or testing phase, you can actually step through as a debugger, just event by event, and see what happens. Or even inject an event. If you're in a state where no events are shown, you can push in an event to see how that affects, like mimicking notification or something like that. Um, and then also to integrate on Android, we have this navigation graph uh, that you can use to display your navigation. It's better than how we used to navigate in the past. And I think it's quite easy to actually have that triggered from the same event stream. So it would be cool to actually integrate with. Um, and with that, and notice I rushed it, but that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you.